Hey guys, it's Brad, the probate house guy. Welcome back to another one of my videos. This video today, though, isn't about anything probate related. I'm actually talking about manufactured homes, and we're specifically going to talk about the new bill that has passed the House and the Senate and is now on President Trump's desk. He said he's not going to sign it, but it does automatically go into law within 10 days, and he didn't say he's going to veto it. So Trump doing another one of his Trump things. I don't know. That guy's kind of crazy. So I want to talk about this bill and some of the provisions in it specifically to manufactured homes. So I know I'm the probate house guy, done a ton of probate deals over the years, but I've also done a lot of manufactured home deals over the years. In fact, I own 3 manufactured homes right now as we speak that we're working on various projects, whether we're flipping them, selling them on seller financing, that sort of thing. So I want to talk about these types of deals. Right now, really manufactured homes here in Georgia are probably the only thing you can buy, the only like kind of house. Obviously, you can probably get some townhouses and stuff for cheaper, but for the most part, it's the only thing under $300,000 around here in really all of North Georgia. In fact, I was just talking to somebody the other day. We were running an ARV, an after repaired value, on a project he was working on, and we were basically like, look, 230,000 is about the lowest you're going to find a rehabbed manufactured home for anywhere in North Georgia, a double wide specifically on at least an acre. If you're on at least an acre and you've got a double wide, your minimum ARV is going to be 230, as high as even more. Last summer, I flipped one that was a larger double wide. It was a 4-bedroom, 2-bath double wide. It was like 2,200 square feet, huge house. And it was on an acre up in Ball Ground. I sold that thing for $295,000. So almost $300,000 is what I sold that thing for. So, and if you go and buy a new one, some of them have crested over $300,000 for a brand new manufactured home on a small piece of land. So let's get into the bill here. But before I get started, I actually made a manufactured home course. It's been almost a couple years ago now, and I have learned a ton of stuff through the School of Hard Knocks over the years, and I actually put all that stuff into this course that's all about manufactured homes, specifically to the state of Georgia, but a lot of that content is relevant to other states too. But it is packed full of everything you need to know about manufactured homes, and I actually periodically update it. In fact, I'm going to update it here in the next day or two with a new little hurdle we've come across on another deal we did. I'm going to update that on how we resolve that. So I've got title resolution things, how to retire titles, how to deal with all the different title issues, liens, lenders, all that stuff, all the construction. We talk about all the construction components of a manufactured home. We talk about all the loan products available. All that stuff is packed into this course. So it's a great course. And if you're watching this video today, you can get that course for the cheap price of $100. Normally, it's almost $250 is what I sell it for. But if you use the checkout code 100 spelled out, so ONEHUNDRED 100, spell it out, you can get that course for $100. Go over to probatehouseguy.com/mobile homes with an S. And you can purchase that course. Again, use the checkout code 100 at checkout, and you'll be able to get that course for $100. So it's worth way more than $100. I mean, it's years of my knowledge that I've learned through the School of Hard Knocks put in one place. But let's get over to the manufactured home bill. I want to talk about this, so let's get into it. All right, so let's share my screen here. So I just had Chat GPT kind of do a little summary here on this. By the way, this passed the House and the Senate last week. I'm making this video on July 1st. Is today July 1st or is this the 30th? Yeah, today's July 1st, Wednesday, July 1st. It passed the House and the Senate last week. So let's get into it. So Section 301, this is a section specifically to manufactured homes, what it changes. So currently, the current law defines a manufactured home as basically a structure built on a permanent chassis. The new law changes it to be with or without a permanent chassis. So that's going to change a lot of things. One of the things is we may see manufactured homes, or mobile homes as some people like to call them, coming in and being delivered on temporary chassis in the future as opposed to a permanent chassis, because before that had to be kind of installed. The way a manufactured home comes in Let's talk about a double wide here. So it comes in two sections, and in each section, there's two big giant steel I-beams underneath, these big I-beam girders. And the axles and the wheels are attached to those I-beam girders, and there's a tongue that goes, a little triangular thing on the front of it that connects to the truck, to the hitch on the truck, and that's how they tow it to the site. And then those big beams are set on concrete piers. They can either be poured concrete or block. Usually they're just concrete block. And then there's a block or a plastic underpinning put around the perimeter. By the way, you'll learn this in the course, but the perimeter of the home is not structural. The actual structure to the home is the concrete piers that the frame sits on. So they set the steel frame down and it's resting on all these concrete piers, just like a lot of houses that are on a crawl space foundation have piers underneath, and then there are beams that sit on top of those piers, and then the floor system is built on top of those beams. Manufactured homes are the same way. So they bring the home in two pieces, they set them, they put them together, and then they set them on these piers, on these beams, and they actually remove the axles and the wheels from the home. They actually have to do that. As per the HUD guidelines, and then they cut the tongues off. A lot of times they just leave the tongue underneath there because they don't really need the steel back. It's not worth transporting back. So they usually just leave them underneath, but they cut the tongues off and then they put their perimeter around the outside. And that's called your skirting or your underpinning is what that's called. On the cheaper end, you can use like vinyl underpinning, but HUD just basically requires it to be a weatherproof material is all their definition says. It doesn't say it has to be block. It doesn't say it has to be, it just has to be a weatherproof or weather resistant. That's actually, I think it's weather resistant material. So I've seen people use pressure treated wood for skirting. Obviously you have the vinyl, the typical like kind of click lock vinyl stuff. And then a lot of people like to use block because that's obviously the most durable. People even put brick. In fact, my HVAC guy lives in a manufactured home that I helped him buy a few years ago, and his entire home is brick. They literally just like bricked the whole thing all the way up to the top. So you'd never know that his house was a manufactured home, but in fact it was. So that's the way that they're built today. What this is going to change is probably, I'd probably venture to say that a lot of these companies are going to use temporary chassis because they'll be able to reuse that steel on other projects. So they'll take those beams out, take them back to the factory and reuse those steel beams. And they'll basically just set the homes on the piers. By the way, the homes are also tied down to the ground. You think about like tornadoes and stuff like that. It's going to lift it away. Your normal sticks and bricks house that you have is actually bolted to your foundation. And the same thing kind of happens here where they actually use these steel tie down straps that are anchored into the ground. And that's what keeps the home from being lifted away. And additionally, there is diagonal bracing that is added for what they call longitudinal and latitudinal bracing that keeps it from rocking from shear side to side on the foundation. And your foundation under your home has kind of similar. It doesn't have the diagonal beams, but it's built into the concrete when they pour the concrete. So that's how they do that. So this is going to change the definition. What it's also going to do is it's going to bring tiny homes and modular homes under the purview of HUD. So it'll open up those types of homes to the HUD financing products, which I think is kind of cool. So now you can get an FHA loan on a tiny home. Now, what this is going to do, I think this is going to negatively affect tiny homes because a lot of those homes would not meet the HUD manufacturing standards in terms of just obviously they're small and they're tiny size, and you have to build a really steep staircase, and the staircase probably doesn't meet code requirements, and there's railing requirements and minimum space requirements and clearances from toilets and things like that. And none of these homes are compliant with any of those regulations. So you might see some new regulations coming in from HUD in regards to tiny homes. That'll probably take a while though, because it's a government and they take a long time to do anything. But this Section 301 is basically changing the definition of a manufactured home. Like I mentioned, it's also going to open up modular and panelized construction under the HUD purview, which is good and bad. The bad of that is now you have to kind of meet HUD standards, whereas before that, it's one more box to check, but now you got to do that. So there is that negative, but it does again open it up to the financing capabilities. If you're not familiar with panelized construction, I think I think panelized construction is really the best of both worlds in this world. And in fact, me and a friend of mine are exploring getting into panelized construction business, which is it's kind of like IKEA does with furniture, but you build all of your wall sections or portions of your wall sections in a factory. They're all framed on a jig, so they're all exactly perfect. You sheet everything with your exterior sheeting, and then they're stacked on a truck. So it's kind of flat packed, as they say, and you can bring them in on a truck, and then you crane them in and you drop them into place, and they get all bolted and fastened together. And sometimes these already have all the wiring and things in the walls already, so it allows you to make your final connections a lot faster. Some of the stuff is done in the factory as opposed to out in the field. And why does that matter? Well, in a regular sticks and bricks house, you're building out in the open, right? You're subject to bad weather. You're subject to temperature changes. You have daylight constraints, right? You can't build, I guess you can with lights at nighttime, but you also have to worry about, being a loud neighbor at nighttime, and maybe you can't build in the evenings because of noise complaints. When you're building these types of things in a factory, you can run a factory 24 hours a day, 365 days a year, 7 days a week. And you can have people working shifts, and these people are working in a climate controlled environment. You're inside a factory, so you're not dealing with weather constraints, right? You're not dealing with temperature constraints, and you can basically build these things all the time, and you don't have to be dependent on the weather and the time and daylight and all those things to build a house. So you can build these things a lot faster. And a lot of these panelized construction and modular homes, these things can be assembled together in a matter of a day or 2 or 3 or 4 days, right? You can get basically an entire dried-in structure in a very short period of time. So that helps cut down on time. Time is money, and obviously costs and that sort of thing. Now, let's go down here. We're going to get past this. So I've already talked about all that. So the Modular Housing Production Act, this doesn't change the law. It instead forces HUD to study and report on construction costs. So HUD's just basically going to do a study on all this stuff and see why it's better, or if it's better, or that sort of thing. So it's just kind of giving some money to studying that sort of thing. Let's go down here. So Section 303, Manufactured Home Loan Modernization. This is good right here. So historically, the lending limits have not kept up with time. So specifically for what's called a Title I, now this says Title III, but for Title I loan programs. So Title I is like, if you have a lot in a manufactured home park and you need to buy a manufactured home and set it there, and you don't actually own the land, you're only financing the home itself, which is called a chattel or chattel loan, however you want to pronounce that in legal terms, which is basically personal property and not real property. Real property is the real estate that it sits on. On those types of homes, you were in a Title I loan product. And unfortunately, over time, those loan limits never went up. So therefore, the less and less people started buying these things because they couldn't finance as large of a percentage of their home as they could before. So it required them to have a lot more cash up front. For instance, nowadays, just in the last probably, let's say 10 years ago, you could go buy like a single wide manufactured home for probably $30,000, $40,000 from a factory. Nowadays, you're talking about $50,000, $60,000, $70,000. I'm not talking about the super high-end products here, but most of the lower to mid-tier grade products, you're spending upwards of $50,000 to $70,000 to buy a single wide, and to buy a double wide, you're in most cases over $100,000 to get a double wide manufactured home. Well, unfortunately, the loan limits didn't keep up with that over time. So this bill is actually raising the loan limits on everything, bringing them up to current standards, so that now you are going to open up these types of loans to more people through the FHA Title I program, versus before a lot of them didn't really do that because they couldn't get a big enough loan to do it because the loans were capped at a certain amount. What this also does is it pertains to property improvement loans. So there's a loan product through FHA called the 203K loan, which is a product you can basically buy a fixer-upper house. Historically, it had to be a sticks and bricks kind of house, a regular construction house. And you could get this loan product. It's an FHA loan product, so it comes with kind of the lower FHA rates, the lower down payment requirements, all that sort of stuff that FHA does, the lower credit score requirements, all the above. And you could buy a fixer-upper and renovate this thing and move into it. Well, prior to this bill, you were not allowed to use a 203K loan on a manufactured home. It was exempt from this. You weren't allowed to do that. Now you can use this 203K loan on a pre-owned manufactured home. So you could go find a manufactured home on a piece of land, an acre. A lot of the ones that we buy and flip nowadays are usually, most of them are, mid to late 90s to early 2000s homes. Those tend to be, those people are kind of selling those homes now. Those are, 20, 30-year-old homes, 25, 30-year-old homes. Those are the ones we're renovating. And to be honest with you, most of them the newer construction manufactured homes are a heck of a lot better in terms of quality than the really old ones. The old mobile homes, and you get into the 1980s and the 70s, and honestly, a lot of those homes, in our opinion, aren't really worth fixing. They're just too much work. It makes better sense just to scrape them and start over again. But some of these, I would say late 90s, mid to late 90s to early 2000s, and even later, we rehab those all the time because they're built very similar to, there's some minor differences, but for the most part, they're built like a normal sticks and bricks house. And, from a rehab and construction standpoint, it's basically the same. So now regular people can buy one of those themselves as a fixer-upper and fix it up themselves, which will be cool because now I can buy some of these homes and resell them as fixer-uppers to some of these people. I also heard through the grapevine the other day, this is not in this bill, that FHA is doing away with the 90-day flip rule. I am so excited for that. Even if they just shortened it to like 30 days. That 90-day flip rule has been a giant pain in my butt, especially in the last couple years, because most of our buyers nowadays are FHA loans, and we are also staying in that lower price point on our flips and our rehabs. And I try to get my rehabs done very, very quickly if I can. And a lot of times we have to put this property on the market and we have to list in it that we cannot accept an FHA loan offer until X date. And we have to wait basically until day 91 to be able to accept an FHA offer. Now, a lot of times we will accept them after about day 60. Probably, we usually say day 70, 75, somewhere in there. We'll go ahead and accept an offer, but we have to actually technically rewrite the offer and cancel our contract and go back under contract with the buyer on day 91. And usually we can get the lender kind of going ahead and working on the loan. And then we just redo the whole thing. And if you have a good lender, they know how to transfer the appraisal over from one file to the other. And then you close out on the new file. And that was our way of kind of getting around the 90-day flip rule. But there's some cases where for instance, I rehabbed a condo last summer, and it's an FHA-approved condo complex, a lower-priced condo, and I did the rehab in like 2 weeks. I mean, I was in and out, done. It was a super easy little rehab. We literally just updated the kitchen, painted, did some just very minor stuff, put it right back on the market, and I had to wait like 2 months before I could accept an FHA offer. And unfortunately, I had a lot of people right off the bat that wanted to make an offer on it that were FHA buyers, and they couldn't because of this stupid arbitrary 90-day flip rule. Now, this 90-day rule was originally created to prevent, kind of during the foreclosure crisis, people were basically just flipping paper, and they were buying and reselling these things, and they were buying them from the auctions and turning around and marking them up and reselling them, right? So they were trying to prevent that. Now, I think that the 90-day number they picked was kind of arbitrary because most of these people were doing all this within 30 days. So I feel like even if you just set the limit at like 30 days or later, I would be perfectly fine with that because most of the time I'm usually getting a project done within 30 days, getting it on the market. And if I need to wait 2 more weeks, if it's quick rehab, wait 2 more weeks, put it back on the market, That's fine with me. And even if I have to pay 2 appraisals, I'm fine with that too, right? I just want the deal done and closed. And if it costs me another $500 for another appraisal because the buyer can only pay for 1 appraisal and the seller has to pay for the second appraisal, I'm okay with that. So my understanding is I saw something about this that they're going to do away with that, which is great. So if I can buy these properties and maybe we fix some of some of the things, and then maybe we don't even paint it and we fix some of the glaring issues that might make it qualify for FHA, and then we can turn around and resell it on FHA financing on one of these renovation loan products, I think that would be great. So anyways, let's go on a little bit further here. We're going to go to the PRICE Act. This is Preservation Reinvestment Initiative for Community Enhancement. This is specifically aimed at manufactured home communities, so mobile home parks. And it's basically giving federal grants to be used to improve infrastructure, water, sewer, roads, drainage, all that stuff, lighting, accessibility, community facilities, all that, basically making these communities better. Additionally, it doesn't really say this in this specific section, but in other sections of the bill, they're now going to treat manufactured home communities in the same fashion that they treat apartment communities and that sort of thing. Before, they were always kind of the redheaded stepchild, as they say, right? I hope I don't offend a redheaded stepchild here, but that's kind of what they were treated like in that world. That's the term for that. They weren't treated the same. They were treated differently. And now they're basically treating them the same and rolling them up under the same umbrella, which they're also trying to encourage municipalities to build more of these communities. Because I think despite the stigma that mobile home parks have, to be honest with you, there's some really nice mobile home parks out there. In fact, we got a lead over the weekend from a home down south of Atlanta in a manufactured home neighborhood. And every lot, the grass is maintained. The grass is mowed for you. There's a community swimming pool. There's tennis. There's pickleball. There's like a little activity area, a clubhouse. They have every lot comes with your own storage unit, and they're nice, newer storage units. They're not like some crappy, dilapidated storage unit. So it's like and if you go down to Florida, you'll see a lot of these communities. They're really nice communities. Like, they're very well maintained. They have basically like a homeowners association, kind of like some of these other HOA communities. They're very well maintained. There are mobile home parks like this too. Now, the lot rent is not cheap in there, that's for sure. But the benefit of that is you go in and you pay lot rent, but you can set your home, you can live in this park. It has all the amenities that you want. You don't have to mow your grass anymore, that sort of thing. So hopefully this will encourage more mobile home parks. And they're also, like I said, encouraging the municipalities to not discourage these types of things. A lot of them created zoning regulations where it's basically impossible to build a new mobile home park. This will maybe help that. So we'll see what this does. And see what happens. Now, for you mobile home park owners, you were always riding on the fact that, hey, they're not building any more of these, so therefore mine's going to be worth more money. It might actually give you a little bit of competition there. So we'll see what happens there. But anyways, that's kind of the summary of the different sections of the bill. Again, if you want to learn more about doing manufactured homes, like I mentioned earlier in the video, I've got a fantastic course that I created. If you go to probatehouseguy.com/mobile homes with an S, you can go over there and get a copy of that course. And through this video right now, if you use the checkout code 100, spell it out, ONEHUNDRED 100. You can get that course for $100, and it is worth way more than $100. Trust me. And it's packed full of information. And like I said, I periodically update that course with new information. So I hope it's there to help you out. So anyways, thanks for checking out this video, guys. Go check out the rest of this bill. There's some stuff in here that's not really going to do anything. And there's some other stuff that I think is actually pretty good and might actually make a difference in the world in terms of housing. So thanks for checking out this video, guys. Hope you have a great day. Bye-bye.